What's up, chat? No one has really showed up yet because I think a lot of people view my streams while I'm at work. They're at work, so I think there's fewer people on the weekends. There used to be like a live viewership numbers, but the current system that I'm using, I don't think it shows the viewership numbers, so I'm not really sure at what time slots people are actually watching or not. It's just not really high priority in terms of my streaming versus like my income source. It's not a good income source at this point. Nobody's really here. I don't know. We'll see if there's nobody who ever shows up. There's like 14 people watching. I usually get like 70. I don't really know. But this is probably the lowest I've had in a while. If nobody actually shows up in chat, I want to continue the stream. So we'll see.
This is earlier than we ever did it when I was here.
Yeah, I usually stream around 4 p.m. So
yeah.
Nobody is really waiting in line to show up and get on the... What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to stream at a very specific time every single day so people know exactly like your TV show.
Yeah.
Which I do not do properly. So we'll see if anybody actually shows up at this time slot, and if not, then I will not continue. I mean, you can have a general discussion with me while we wait for people to ask me questions if you want to.
What you've been reading lately?
I don't read. That's
What have you been playing lately?
I've been playing older video games. I don't even know if you were you here. Did I have that CRT TV in the corner last time you showed up? Last time you came, or is that new for you to see?
You mean what you're looking at now, or something different?
No, the TV. Oh, I guess you can't see it from that angle. That's hidden by the desk.
I can't.
I bought an old TV specifically to play old video games.
Ah.
But I haven't really been using it because I have to move this monitor in order to put the new TV there.
It's a new old TV.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Like from 2002 or something.
that I've been reading that is new for me is early Hemingway, which I used to detest him because he was such a large presence. He kind of he was like an invasive weed that overpowered other writers. And also, when I was a kid, he was getting older and he was going downhill. But I read a World War I novel of his from the 1920s called A Farewell to Arms, and it's great. It works. He really was inventing something when he was in his 20s. And it's a terrific war novel in that there is a lot of waiting around, and then it's horrible for a brief time, but you don't perceive it as a brief time, and then there's a lot of waiting around again, and it's true, and the people are, you believe them, they're impressive. He was in World War I, he was an ambulance driver on the Italian front, and why he wound up there I'm not sure, but the US Army didn't want him, and so he went off and did that. And then it took about like 8 or 10 years before he began to write about it, and he was still in his late 20s when he did. So he had distance on it, but he was still definitely young, and it just clicks, it all works.
Hemingway was always great. You just weren't manly enough to appreciate it, that's all.
Well, I still don't think I could do a Michigan hunting and fishing story of his. I assume that I will still not be able to cope with it.
Here, let's ask Grok, the Twitter AI, to produce a fake paragraph of Hemingway text.
Why don't you give it a theme? Like,
Grok, produce a paragraph of fake Hemingway text centered around manliness, sailors, alcohol, and loneliness. Was loneliness a big
Yes.
Hemingway theme?
Sure.
Yeah. Goes with the manliness. Can't spell loneliness. Loneliness.
Loneliness.
The sailor sat at the bar, his calloused hands cradling a glass of rum that burned like the sun on the ocean sea. His beard was rough, salted by years of wind and wave, and his eyes held the lonely weight of a man who'd fought storms and won, but lost something nameless in the deep. He drank alone, not because he chose it, but because the world had carved him into something too hard for softer men to sit beside. His bottle was his only crew now, steady as the tide, whispering truth no one else could hear. Seems a little purple, honestly, the prose.
There are so many parodies of Hemingway that I think the IT just went to the parodies of Hemingway
That's possible.
and souped it up.
I feel like Hemingway has shorter sentences than that.
And he's more likely to go first person than that. So that he can refer to his feelings without telling you what they are. And when he's really on, it works. You know what the first person character is feeling, but he didn't exactly say it.
Anyways, I'd prefer to listen to, I don't know, Hemingway over, I don't know, Jane Austen, for example, as I'm.
Oh, do the same thing with Jane Austen. all the same indicators, but Jane Austen.
The same fake paragraph, but now generate Jane Austen text. Let's not make anything specific. Oh, they gave me the same paragraph, but instead of going to a different location, it says, Mr. Harrow, a sailor of rugged countenance and solitary disposition, sat in the dim-lit tavern, his weathered hands clasped around a tankard of ale, which he regarded with a mixture of resolve and melancholy. His seafaring life, marked by the boisterous camaraderie of sailors and the fleeting solace of spirits, had rendered him a figure of both, admired and isolated in the eyes of society. The loneliness that clung to him was not merely the absence of company, but a profound solitude of the heart, born of years spent battling tempests and yearning for a connection as enduring as the oak of his ship. Yet in the clink of the glass and the murmur of the tavern, he found a quiet dignity, a man steadfast in his solitude, nursing his drink as one might a fragile hope. Is the Jane Austen version of this.
That was very instructive. And it's better Jane Austen than it is Hemingway, which is interesting.
Yeah, I've had them produce Jane Austen themed stuff in the past, and it always does a pretty solid job of faking Jane Austen, I've noticed, actually.
Yeah, because it can elaborate, but with Hemingway you have to take things out.
Yeah, I
but
think
with
you're
Jane
right
Austen
about
you
that.
put more things in, and so the Jane Austen version sounds more right.
Ultimately, AI tools, these large language models, are directly related to how much of that type of text is sitting around on the internet. So more is always better. So if you're trying to do shit with, like, I don't know, if you want content about video games, the only content about video games that they have in the text format to scrape the internet over is people talking about video games on Reddit message boards.
Yeah.
Whereas most of the video game content is going to be videos, and the large language models don't really have a method for scraping videos, as far as I know, that is like can be fed back into the language model. So.
Oh yeah, that would be, you'd somehow have to migrate from visual to verbal, or the other way.
Yeah.
And probably the other way is easier, but as you've pointed out, you still wind up with 6 fingers and stuff like that.
So the 6 fingers issue has gotten better, but they still can't do text. The text portion of AI and the image portion of the AI are still completely different things. So if you ask like ChatGPT or whatever to generate like a sign, it can somewhat do text now, but it can't. Like, often the letters will be messed up in weird ways, or the spelling might be wrong, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Another thing it cannot produce is a budget for the Defense Department. Because they're obviously trying. There was a hearing in Congress with the Chief of the Army, and they were able to describe verbally what their spending plan for the next few years is going to be, but they couldn't produce any numbers. That is, they know that they want to declare certain weapon systems obsolete and put that money into other weapon systems.
Are you saying they actually said they used ChatGPT to try and produce their budget and they failed?
No,
or are they just
I'm
not capable of
diagnosing
doing it?
I'm diagnosing that it is obvious that they must have done. And so my theory is that the budgeting part is way too hard for AI to do, and they couldn't either.
Well, the current version of AI doesn't have any thinking capabilities. It's just aggregating all the information it has and then producing an average out of it. So we can't make any decisions.
No. No, and it can't, it can't come to a conclusion about a thing, which is really sort of the same as making a decision.
I say this pretty much every stream, but I think the stock market is vastly inflated right now based on tech bros' hope that AI will be the equivalent of the internet or cell phones and stuff like that. And all signs point to the fact that it definitely isn't, and it won't have that level of impact on the economy, but they're still hoping against hope that it will. And I refuse to invest my money at the current number in the S&P 500.
God, no. Yeah. I mean, even if it was true, if that was the case, it would be too late to put money into it. You would have decided it 5 years ago or something. But now you're not going to make any money even if they're right.
I don't know. I think there's people who think that it can go up forever.
Yeah.
Among the venture capitalists.
That's absolutely true.
I like how I can't tell which one is the father, says one of the people on chat. That's not true. I'm much younger than him, and I have a more youthful voice, and my opinions are much more young and in tune with the average young person.
We just agree a lot about AI. That's all.
I haven't really found people in my stream that are like, no, AI is, the next big thing. Most people who are interested enough in art to watch a stream of somebody drawing something are also in the same camp that AI is it's a trick, and they're not willing to, they're not willing to stake their reputation on AI succeeding. So it's pretty easy for me to find people who agree about AI not being I think the more people use AI, unless you're actually directly investing in it, the more you actually touch AI on a daily basis, the more it's obvious that it doesn't have great commercial uses besides some limited amounts of applications, and you can't actually get away with firing your entire workforce, which is what the stock market valuation is based on. So
it's also what the Department of Health and Human Services is based on. They are getting rid of 30 to 50% of their workforce, and they just put out a big report which is clearly AI because it's full of citations to articles that didn't exist.
Yeah, but we haven't reached the stage 2 of that, which is where they have to rehire everybody because they realize that they've made a huge mistake.
Well, you double down. You never realize. I don't think in that world you ever realize you made a huge mistake.
Well,
if you realize it, then you're out.
Yes. There is always the you can always take the choice of just making everything worse and not, making anything better, and you can just not use AI at all. You can fire everybody, realize that the AI isn't going to work, and then not rehire anybody, and then everything is just worse, but that's okay.
Yeah, you solve it through propaganda.
Please take turns talking. When 2 people talk at once, the AI translation just breaks, says Korean person with Korean name. I can't tell if they're being sarcastic or not. AI is just humanity desperate to find something to do next because everything in humanity has been invented. It's just now trying to make existing things better. For them to admit they made a mistake is going to cost billions. I mean, there was long periods in which humanity didn't invent new things, but capitalism doesn't allow for that to happen. So yeah, they have to do something with. They have to pretend like something new is being invented.
Yeah. Either there's real dynamism or you have to fake it, because the system can't handle stagnation. It starts to sink.
Line must go up is the term the internet uses regarding this. The line must go up, and it must go up forever. Which, at some point, population of the planet is just going to start going down. I don't think any sort of growth and efficiency or whatever is going to save the capitalists line going up forever situation once the number of people on the planet starts going down. I don't think there's efficiency growth that can stop that.
It's really interesting which countries are having, births going below the replacement rate, because it no longer is about being a poor, middle, or rich income country. So Japan has, I don't know what it's like 1.7, 1.8.
It's like 1.3. It's not that high.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
But North Korea is also below 2.0.
Literally, there is no country that has a somewhat modern economy, industrialized economy, that doesn't have declining birth rates. And nobody can actually agree on what's causing it.
And there are some low-income countries that have declining birth rates. That's really interesting to me. But it is a kind of collective, it's a survival trait on humanity's part, because if nothing else is happening to slow down global warming, that is something available.
Whatever. You guys are going to be dead anyways.
That's for sure.
The boomers have fucked up everything, and now they get to fuck off and leave not necessarily my generation, but the 2 generations below me to have to pick up the shit.
Why not your generation?
Our generation is too far gone. The millennials ain't fixing anything. We're donezo. The millennials are just going to be boomers 2.0.
Speaking of Gen Z, does anybody on the chat know of Catherine Abugazala?
I don't know. Chat, do you know who Catherine Abugazala is? Sounds like a terrorist. Rich people don't need to find a way to be happy. Poor people think the only way to be happy is to have kids. I think poor people want free labor to, work on the farm. I don't think anybody knows who that is. Most of the people in my stream aren't actually Gen Z, I think.
Yeah, probably not.
They're probably like 25, I think. It all started when the gold standard was replaced. We got some Ralph Nader in here. Wait, did Ralph Nader say that, or am I thinking of someone else?
I think you're thinking of someone else.
Who was the gold standard guy?
There are multiple ones, but online is probably some major one.
Wasn't Ralph Nader a gold standard guy? Who was like, we should have never moved on from the gold standard?
Could be. I wouldn't say no.
I'm mid-30s. Everybody calls me old because I'm like 38, which is unfair. 30 is the new 12. I shouldn't be asked to be a responsible adult. Basically, whoever gets the blame takes the heat, so no one wants to take it. I mean, the boomers 100% have to take the blame. They're the ones in power now, and if they've had the outsized voting power for the last 50 years, so anything bad in the world, I'm going to blame the boomers on, and I don't give a fuck if it's accurate or not. They've earned it. I do think a lot of stuff will change in society once the boomers are dead and gone, though. I mean, think about it. All the major political figures of pretty much every country are boomers if they haven't been replaced by young people yet. Like, Russia, China, America. Those are all boomer-run countries. Not to mention, like, the voting power and stuff like that. As usual, Gen X never gets mentioned. Yeah, if you look at the demographic bumps, because the millennials are the children of boomers, Gen X don't have the same population power, so they're never going to be significant. They're just going to be skipped over, probably. Boomers need to take the blame. He says he's in the same room as a boomer. That's right. I hope he's getting the message. I follow a YouTube video stream that follows the tea leaves in China, and they were saying that there was some weird evidence that Xi Jinping might be losing his political power. There was a local museum memoriam place that was supposed to be named after Xi Jinping's father, who was like a huge figure in the classic Communist Party before they became like massive capitalist. And it was supposed to be named after him, and they changed the name to not something other than Xi Jinping's father recently. And of course, there's no explanation for this, but it's one of those weird tea leaf things that you have to check out in the when you're trying to figure out what's going on in communist power structures. And also, apparently Deng Xiaoping is still alive, and he was having meetings with one of the military people.
No.
I think so.
Deng Xiaoping?
Yeah,
alive?
I think he was still alive.
Not possible.
Was he? Is he dead?
Well, I know how old he was when he was in power. Roughly.
No, yeah, he died. So it was probably I probably wasn't paying attention. It was probably a different person that was replaced pre Xi Jinping. But apparently some other political figures were having some sort of meeting among themselves. So we'll see. I don't think he's going to get.
Don't be sorry.
Xi Jinping is going to get ousted anytime soon. But
yeah,
I just think that we all want our dictators to be Stalin, and sometimes we get reminded that they're actually not Stalin. Stalin was a special guy, and it takes a lot to get that Stalin energy going, and people don't have the ability to create these rock solid political dictatorships where they can send everybody they don't like to Siberia and, you know, have control over everything until they're straight up dead. So Gen Alpha has no political, financial, or militaristic power. Yeah, because they're like 12. Why is nobody blaming Gen Alpha? I'll blame Gen Alpha, don't worry. Everything in society is wrong because of the children. Am I out of touch? No, it is the children who are to blame. That's a famous Simpson quote on the internet, if you don't know.
They're hopelessly spoiled, and they're not doing anything about it.
I mean, every generation has to worry about how the children are fucking completely worthless and stupid and stuff like that, but apparently there's all these studies coming out that now that we have all cell phones going all the time, people have legitimately gotten stupider in the past 20 years and shit like that, so we'll see how it turns out. But it is literally like every single generation. It's like, oh my god, these kids, they don't know how to read and write because they're playing video games. They're
watching television.
They're all Satanists because they play Dungeons and Dragons. Like, we do this literally every generation, so we'll see if it's true.
Yeah, in sociology, it's called a moral panic.
It wasn't this way when I was young. They don't make dictators like they used to. I mean, the dictators are trying, but it's not easy. That's a nice Kuyashi face there. Speaking English, this is America. Excuse me, speaking American, this is America. We don't allow for that kind of ching chong slip slop bullshit. We didn't win the war for that. Kuyashi. Japanese is just a more expressive language than English. There's just more terms for different things. Especially regarding like feelings and stuff like that. Says the man making ching chong drawing in America. My heart is still in Japan though. Do we have any Westerners making it in the Japanese manga industry? I don't know if there are. There was a European, I think like a Scandinavian guy who was doing a Jump series a few months ago. It got canceled because it wasn't popular enough, but of all the things they decided to do like Norwegian or Swedish police drama using special shonen manga abilities based on the names of Swedish people. So like half the characters had bear related abilities because like half of the people in Sweden are named like Bjorn or something, I guess. It was a horrible idea. I don't know what the editors were thinking, but the art was really good. But they just couldn't write. There are some doujins that are, I think. I mean, Shindo L is, he's Japanese, but he was born in, or he grew up in New York or something like that. I think he can speak English. But I don't think there's any, like, true foreigners besides Koreans who are making it in the manga market. I feel like there's an entire generation of black teens and 20-somethings constantly trying to get published by Shonen. Yeah, the problem is that they all the only books they've read are Shonen manga, so there's no depth to their stories and stuff like that. You have to be able to read things other than My Hero Academia if you want to actually publish something good. You have to read some Tolstoy or something, I don't know. Because you're sort of downstream the better content in order to get the upstream content into your work, you have to read it.
Is that you saying it or somebody
That's
else?
me saying it.
Oh.
As someone who reads all these Japanese amateur internet stories, it's pretty obvious that a lot of these people have, the current generation of these amateur writers have only read the same thing that they're trying to get into instead of reading like better content. If you want to create lowbrow parodies of better stuff, you have to read the better stuff. And then you can make like the McDonald's version of higher quality food, but the problem is a lot of these people haven't read the better stuff. They've only read the slop to begin with, and then you only get worse slop. Most likely they can't stand the short deadlines. Now that a lot of stuff is online, some of the deadline stuff has gotten a little bit better. If you notice the Shonen Jump online web portal, if any of you read that, series will go on breaks every, like, I don't know, 2 months or so, because the editors will actually allow mangaka to take a break instead of just going non-stop forever, because they don't have an actual magazine that has to be filled with content. Because when they publish in the magazine format, the number of pages they're going to publish is already determined. So they need to have they need to fill every single page in one way or the other. And if you can't make it every week, then you're opening a hole in the magazine, and it's a huge issue for everybody. But if it's online and you're just like, I just can't make my deadline, they're like, that's okay. Obviously, if you continuously not make your deadline, eventually the editors will kick you out, but it's not the same level of urgency. Isn't that an extension of Japanese new labor laws that require a certain amount of vacation time for every hour worked? So that's if you're an employee. The magical thing about the manga industry is everybody who's making manga is considered to be self-employed, in which case no labor laws ever apply to you, which means you can abuse yourself as much as you want. So there's nothing to stop you from, never sleeping ever until you die, which is what the publishing companies want. It's gotten a little better though. They want to call themselves mangaka while trying to make it very distinctly Western. I don't know. I've read a bunch of stuff published by Westerners in English that clearly they love Shonen Jump and they love manga and they want to be a mangaka. And I think it's really bad, honestly, because they don't understand what parts of the manga apply to English and what parts don't. And it reads like a poor scantillation translated manga, and it's just poor quality all around. And a lot of it comes from the lack of awareness of what part of the writing works and what part of the writing doesn't work. Like some of these Western manga fan people they'll just straight up write the onomatopoeia like glare or grab and stuff like that you're forced to do if you're doing the shitty translations, because there's no English version of the Japanese onomatopoeia that is explaining the situation. So they have to write the actual word. But like the whole point of writing something in English is that now you have an opportunity to produce something that is more English oriented, but these people only read manga, so they can't make that distinction that they're creating an English-based thing. My personal experience has been scantillations have been better than the localized versions. I mean, it doesn't really matter whether the scantillation or the local official translation is better or not. What I'm saying is that if you're writing it in your original language of English, then now you can actually have an opportunity to make it seem natural in the English format, which is what I'm trying to do. And then a lot of these other people who do manga don't do that, and I think that's a huge wasted opportunity. And I think they're being blinded by the shininess of the Japanese manga industry object and making a mistake in how they produce their stuff. There are some real dogshit official localizations where you have activists who literally change the meaning of things for no reason. Just read it in Japanese, guys. Learn Japanese, it's not that hard, says the person who has been a bilingual speaker since he was 6 years old.
It's hard. There was an official U.S. military standard for it, which is 20 to 25 hours of study a week for 4 years, one of those years in country, and then you can be tested and maybe you have learned Japanese.
The good thing about manga is that it's actually good for learning Japanese because they have furigana on everything. So it's a good tool for learning how to read kanji and stuff like that. I learned how to read kanji by reading manga. I think all kids do. Read your shonen manga with furigana on them. A lot of fan translation on sites for manga actually explain certain words too in translation notes. The weirdest thing that I thought got an official translation was Sayonara Zetsubou Sensei, where literally every single joke is a time-sensitive Japanese like knowledge check that if you're not paying attention to the Japanese news at the time, even Japanese people wouldn't know what the manga is talking about, and yet they decided to translate it. And if you look at the back areas of Sayonara Zetsubou Sensei in the translation notes, there's like 20 pages in the back of every volume explaining like this is based on a political vote that was up during the Shinzo Abe Prime Minister era, stuff like that. In fact, it was so long ago, it's like the Koizumi Prime Minister era or some shit. And it references like shit like Japanese literature and Japanese talento agencies and all that stuff. And there's just zero reason why an American reader who isn't living in Japan would ever be able to understand what the fuck they're talking about. Anyways, the best manga don't even need any text translation in the first place. I only read good manga like Baki the Grappler, where all the content is just people punching each other. Or Prison School, where it's just big boobs and stuff. For those of you joining the stream, my father is here, so you can ask some questions about boomerism if you want. When you read raw manga, do you buy subscriptions? So mostly I just read the raw manga that is available to me for free on the Japanese official websites, because there's a lot of ongoing series that are just updated on a weekly basis, where the latest chapter you can read for free. But when I want to get volumes and stuff, I'll go to one of these Japanese book sites and buy the volume for like, you know, $4 or less. I guess like $3 or something. It's pretty cheap now that the yen is so much cheaper. I used to, you know, engage in a little bit of piracy, which is illegal, and I should never do that. So I'm just that's just a joke, Twitch. I would never engage in piracy. But yeah, it used to be easier to find Japanese raw scans, but it's gotten harder, so I don't really care as much. The number one way in which I read manga actually is I just read it in Japan. When I go to Japan, like I can go to a manga cafe and just read it all. The ideal release schedule of a manga is 2 weeks. 1 week is rush work and 1 month is taking too fucking long. I mean, the question is, how many pages do you get per month is how you should think about it. Because like, if you're getting like, I don't know, 32 pages, if you're doing 16 pages release twice per month, and that means you're getting 32 pages per month. But some monthly releases, it'll be more like 40 pages, 45 pages. And that would be closer to like the halfway point in between the weekly release, which isn't actually 16 pages per week. That's like the minimum. It can often be as much as like 20 pages per week. So the popular weekly releases, we're talking about like 80 pages per month. Reminds me that I should buy Dungeon Meshi volumes. I mean, if you're going to read it in English, you really don't need to buy anything. Piracy is easy and readily available. People who claim that it's hard to do piracy, it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I can literally Google Dungeon Meshi and the first result will be like a scantillation site at the fucking top of the Google search results. So I don't think the Japanese publishers are really cracking down on readily available English piracy, that's for sure. But if you want to read it in Japanese like me, it suddenly becomes slightly more difficult. Just to support officially, you should buy the stupid elf statue for $500. I'm sure she has. I'm sure Marcille has a statue. It's only $60, guys, or $90.
How tall is it?
I don't know. It looks like 6-7 inches. It's probably not that big.
Uh-huh.
The thing about the statues is if you don't buy them at release, and if you don't buy them like pre-release, there's a really high chance that they get sold out and then they don't make more, and then you can only buy them in the secondary market, and then they end up being like twice the price. Is it true that most of manga anime revenue comes from merch? No, it comes from book sales. Japanese people still buy books. You do get a salary based on the number of pages you draw, but it's like below minimum wage usually. It's like 7,000 yen per page, which obviously isn't enough to survive, considering it takes like, 3 or 4 hours to draw a page minimum, so you have to pay your assistants and shit. So then you have to sell, I don't know, at least 10,000 volumes to like probably survive, is how I think it works. I actually used to do fan translations for a few things before I started drawing manga. I think it was right out of college and stuff. And then I realized I could make money as a professional translator, so I started doing industrial translation and stuff, and I actually got paid a salary. I'm like, why the fuck am I doing this shit for free? If you guys look up the Kyo Kara Orewa scans, I bet you'll find my shit still. Yep, 7 years ago. Can I actually find the chapters that I did? You go, translator, BaalBud, right here. I think I quit around volume like 6 or 7. The history. The internet tattoo never disappears, you know. That means you're a scantilator. I didn't scan shit. There were a bunch of other people online that did the scanning and also the typesetting and stuff. All the things you chose to translate. Wait, when was this made? Kyokara Orewa is an extremely well-regarded Japanese Yankee manga. But you guys wouldn't know because you're filthy Western plebs who only read the latest Shonen Jump slop. Why don't you let my father draw? He's worthless.
Nah, don't. Not my medium.
Not only can he not draw, you can only imagine the despair I felt when I asked him to play video games with me and I realized there were a certain generation of human beings who were incapable of controlling characters on a screen. I was like, holy shit.
It's neural. I can't.
They literally can't play video games. This is so sad. And I feel the same way every time I watch my mother try and operate a cell phone and stuff, but I guess in the general scale of stuff, she's still relatively better than other boomers, which is saying a lot about, how bad.
Yeah, also, well, she has a smartphone though, right?
Yeah.
I don't go that far.
Jesus. Grim. I read the Rent-A-Girlfriend genre slop, thank you very much. I noticed that the Rent-A-Girlfriend author had a new series, or not new series, but they were promoting one of his series because it was going to get animated on whatever manga website I was browsing, and so they obviously offer like a bunch of free chapters, so I was like, I'll try reading it. And I was like, it's a guy with 7 siblings. Are we going to get an incest manga? And then obviously in chapter 1, the father is like, I didn't tell you kids, but none of you are related. I was like, dropped. No incest, no reading. Of course they don't have the balls to do the incest manga. Say what you will about there's no way my little sister can be this cute. At least the author was adamant about wanting to have an incest story. And he never broke his promise to have a story about wanting to fuck his blood-related sister. So I respect him for that. Is that the recent anime that came out? Shiunji Family or whatever? Yeah, I believe so. I haven't actually seen the anime. Men who break their promises are the worst, am I right? That's right. Never break your promises. Date bayo. Believe it. I will be Hokage. At least tell me your dad can play a turn-based game. No, he literally can't hold a controller. Maybe if I gave him a mouse and keyboard, but I think even that would be too much. It reminds me of Roger Ebert when he decided that he was somehow qualified to judge whether video games were art or not. And he did this by watching a variety of videos of other people playing video games. And he was like, this seems interesting, this doesn't seem interesting. I just want to be like, you literally cannot fucking play the video game, you pathetic boomer. You have no right to have any kind of opinion on video games. Video games are an interactive experience. It was like the height of both critic and boomer arrogance in thinking that he was qualified to grade whether something was an art form or not, in which you can't even participate in it.
But a lot of criticism is like that. I mean, painting.
It would be like a literal deaf person trying to judge how great an orchestra is just by like watching people moving their bowstrings back and forth.
I agree, but an awful lot of criticism is like that, including criticism of movies.
Okay,
it's
just
not like
because
people could make a movie or direct a movie.
Yeah, but the
or even
movie,
produce a movie.
the movie is produced for people who can't make a movie, but there is a certain level of consumer
You're
that
right.
the movie is made around.
You're right. That is, at least you can speak as a consumer of a movie, but he was only speaking
He's
as
not
a
a video-
consumer of watching a person consume something.
Yeah, he can't participate as the target audience.
So what it's really like is a restaurant critic who goes and does not order a meal but watches other people eat.
Yes, it would be someone grading restaurants based on watching the Food Channel is basically what it was. He's like, that looks like a 3-star Michelin restaurant. It's like, no, actually it's horrible because all you're doing is watching it on TV. As usual, the food analogy is the one that we have to go to because we always have to go to the food analogy, but that's just the way it is.
Food is a good analogy.
Well, everybody has to eat.
Yeah, it is multi-sided, so it keeps working for other things.
Interactivity is an integral part of the art form. Yeah, if you can't play the video game, then you can't judge a video game. I personally think that GTA 4 was an entire video game about being lonely in New York City and feeling alienated from the other characters in the game and feeling shitty about yourself and also committing mass murders and robbery and stuff, but that's the video game portion. Think how many critically acclaimed art movies are just about being lonely in New York City. Taxi Driver, Midnight Cowboy, etc., etc. So if those things are considered to be masterpieces, then GTA 4 must also consider to be art. That's like I think the most straightforward argument I have for video games being art. The more honest argument would be to just like play something like Tetris and then play it until your eyes bleed. Isn't there a French term about feeling immensely alone while being surrounded by people? Asked Death Striker. I'm sure you know this.
You're sure, but you're wrong. I don't know it, and it does feel like it. But there's anomie. Maybe that's what he's after. A-N-O-M-I-E.
Not ennui?
No. Well, ennui is different. Anomie is really a social thing. That is, so it has the dimension of you're surrounded collectively. There's lots of other people, but you feel disconnected from them.
That sounds about right.
That's probably the one he wants. Ennui is something that you can have by yourself, in a small group, in a crowd, or anyway, you know. And there's doubtless a Japanese word for ennui that's really good.
I guess.
Like, not feeling that good, not feeling that bad, but certainly not wanting to do anything.
I don't know. There's words, but I don't feel like there's a good word, like a word that I would want to be ported to other cultures.
Uh-huh.
Anomie sounds a lot like enemy society. It sounds a lot like, what was the French movie with the woman?
There's so many of those.
You know what I'm talking about. Wasn't that also
No.
an A?
Huh?
Wasn't that also an A movie that starts with A?
Alphaville?
French lady movie. Amélie, that's right.
Oh yeah, right. But that's comedy.
Yeah, but it's a French word that starts with A.
That's true. And it's basically somebody taking the the essential concept that Audrey Hepburn worked out.
You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and
And
say it. I
making
fucking
it a
hate
thing.
French cinema. Fuck French cinema. That shit sucks.
Have you watched?
No, you're not gonna change my opinion on it. I've seen enough French movies. I've decided
What's
that.
the last French movie you saw?
That's a good question. Because I can't watch movies with subtitles, and I refuse to watch them with dubs. So as long as my primary form of watching
Okay.
movies is while I draw and it being like in the background, that means I can't watch foreign language films. The last foreign language film I watched was Downfall for like the third time, having it in the background, listening to Hitler lose his mind while I was drawing, which
That's
is,
an excellent choice.
yes,
Very fine film.
you're not going to be like, oh, I missed that plot point. I wonder what's going to happen to Hitler. So it's just good background noise.
I see. Well, Elevator to the Gallows. That's the last one I watched, and I don't know what you would make of it, but
Anyways,
I
I've
like
watched
it.
enough French movies, including French movies that I think I would like, and I don't like most of them. So I think it's safe for me to say that French cinema is not for me. In fact, if you asked me to choose like one French movie, I couldn't even think of one that I'd be like,
I think you're
Stand
just
up
too
for
far outside the game to have a meaningful opinion.
yeah, but I've seen enough to know that my batting average with French movies for what I like is lower than 30%, so why would I spend my precious time touching French movies?
Well, you should go to YouTube or something and watch 5 minutes of Elevator to the Gallows.
There's a lot of good French-Japanese co-productions like Enter the Void. You know what I'm also done with? Japanese movies as well. I'm not talking about classic Japanese movies that feature fucking Kurosawa samurai. I'm talking about modern Japanese movies. I haven't watched a modern Japanese movie that I've liked in a long, long time. They're always about like heartwarming, low-budget stories about Japanese families suffering and shit like that, and the acting always fucking sucks. I don't know what happened in between Kurosawa and Ozu and where we are today, but I fucking hate modern Japanese cinema. Get that shit out of my face. Fifth Element is French. I also don't like Luc Benson and Fifth Element either. I don't like the wacky French stuff as well. Again, I can't even think of a good French movie that I like. I just literally can't think of a single French movie I like off the top of my head. Greatest French movies.
What does the internet say?
Forbes 30 top Time Out IMDb top 100 best French movies. Here we go. The Rules of the Game.
You wouldn't like it.
Jean Reno. The Mother and the Whore. Children of Paradise. Contempt. Perrault de Faux. Eyes Without a Face. Playtime. Oh, I know. I watched what was the term? Obsession? No.
Diabolique?
The one of the Apartment trilogy by what's his name? Repulsion.
Oh, well, I would call that a Polish movie.
But isn't it set in France?
Yeah,
No, it's
but-
it's set in England with a French woman.
It's Polanski.
Yeah, but you're not calling Repulsion a French movie? I think it's a French movie.
No, Roman Polanski is himself, and his sensibility is a lot blacker than the French sensibility.
Well, I don't like the French sensibility. That's the problem. I'm going through this list of top 100.
Keep
and
going. You keep giving me names.
I've seen a bunch of these and I don't like them as well.
Oh, if you've seen one, give me the name.
I didn't like Belle du Jour.
Yeah, that would be out of your zone.
They're not. They don't have umbrellas of Cherbourg in here. I don't guess it's not French.
It is. It's very French.
Well, it should be in
Did
the
you
top
watch it?
50. I've seen it. Yes.
And you couldn't. Of course, that's a musical, so that's a whole other thing.
It's 53 on this list.
Uh huh.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not seeing anything.
Have they got Elevator to the Gallows?
Probably not on this list. It seems like an old ass list.
Well, it's an old ass film, Elevator to the Gallows.
Yeah.
Miles Davis wrote the score for it. That's how old it is.
Is your father a French movie buff? He'd probably
Yes.
say no, but he is.
No, I would say yes. That doesn't mean I love every French movie on, on principle.
The
But
greatest French production is Onimusha 3, says Death Striker. The French do horror well?
no,
I don't think so. I just...
there was a recent dystopia one whose name I'm forgetting. Maybe I'll remember later. And it was pretty good.
I don't know. The average American French movie slop is Amélie and Chocolat and stuff like that. But I don't like that as well. I don't like the highbrow French content, and I don't like the lowbrow French content like Luc Benson either.
Yeah, and you won't watch older ones. So that leaves out a lot.
I don't watch newer ones either.
Yeah. Neither newer nor older.
I've seen enough French movies that I've come to the conclusion that the batting average is too low for me to spend time on it. French is one of those languages that's hard to take seriously. I don't know,
In what sense?
my only language that I'm like, I'm not gonna watch this movie because it's too, I don't like the languages like Mandarin, Chinese stuff. If it's too harsh.
Huh.
I don't like all the zh and the ja and all those sounds.
Can't take it, huh?
It's just, especially when they do anime, it sounds bad. I think even the Chinese know this, which is why they always value the Japanese voice actors. Because Americans love imagining that France is whimsical, then go there and realize the French hate Americans. I think you're thinking of the Japanese. I don't know if the Americans feel that way about the French. Maybe some of them do. Martyrs was a pretty good French horror movie.
I don't know it.
BB, Amélie is a genuine and comedic film. The part in which she helps the blind man by describing their surroundings, it brought a non-existent tear to my eye. Hearing me speak for 20 minutes, do you think that there's a single sympathetic, empathetic bone in my body?
Yeah.
Do you think that I give a single fuck about the blind person's feelings or this whimsical, cute French girl bringing joy to people around her?
Yeah, what's going on there is Chaplin was a big influence on the French, so they're basically borrowing from Chaplin to do a scene like that.
I don't like Chaplin either.
Yeah, he would be too sentimental for you.
He is extremely sentimental.
But do you like Buster Keaton?
I mean, Buster Keaton and Chaplin are two different categories.
They are. That's what but you didn't answer my question.
I would like Buster Keaton if more people died during the films. But
Some of them
unfortunately,
almost did die.
yeah, unfortunately, he seems to have a knack for not dying, so it's not as cool.
That's because when he was a kid, instead of going to school, he was in vaudeville with his father, and his father threw him around the stage and taught him all the tricks to not break bones and stuff like that. That was his upbringing. That's why he's so good.
I'm just saying, there's nothing that will get me watch a movie more than hearing beforehand that it was a massive failure for some certain reason. That's why I went to go watch Megalopolis in the theaters.
Yeah.
That's the only movie in many years in which I'm like, oh, I have to go see this because it's going to be a massive, massive bomb, and Coppola wasted his wine field on getting it, created. So.
Yeah, now I won't be able to see it for a long time.
Oh, is it not getting a DVD release and stuff?
I don't know.
I think it's on streamers if you want to see it. I mean, it's not really worth going out to see. wasting your
Yeah.
time to see it. But
No, I'm glad you mentioned it. I'll try to find out if I can see it streaming. Because then I can just take it in little doses if I want.
it's a thing. It's not unentertaining, I'll say that. Shit happens. Whether any of the shit happening makes any sense is up to
Yeah,
you, but
right. Is it like a collection of good scenes that don't hang together?
yeah, I don't know. Coppola is so deep up his own ass, it's hard to tell if they
Yeah.
hang together or not.
Uh-huh.
It's like a fever dream. Part of it seems like a, you know those concepts art they have of like future cities where there's like lots of greenery and
Mm-hmm.
the meme of like the dystopian future versus the utopian future. There's like scenes in Megalopolis which are literally just like the utopian future meme. It's pretty funny. Does anybody remember Brian De Palma?
Yeah, I do.
I don't. I remember the name, but I don't remember who it was.
He was, I think, primarily an 80s guy. And, you know, a certain amount of blood and gore. But I didn't find him very skillful.
Scarface, Carrie. I never enjoyed Scarface as much as I was supposed to enjoy Scarface. I'll say that.
I watched it, but I wouldn't watch it a second
You
time.
watched it with me because I was
You
bagging
wanted to know.
out all the important movies of the, canon
Yeah.
of America in 1998 or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I am so sad how few people saw Warfare. I haven't even heard of Warfare, so obviously didn't get much publicity. I will say if you can find translated French graphic novels, it is totally worth it. French artistry in terms of their graphic novels is like the highest quality of like drawing skill. But then you don't only get like one book every 8 years and stuff, so it's like the opposite of the Japanese like shit out manga quickly.
Uh-huh. There is a graphic novel that's based on the writings of Anais Nin in the 1920s, and it's really Belgian. It's a woman artist, and she's Belgian, and she's slaved over it, and it is gorgeous. I can't decide whether I want this or this. You can't see what I'm talking about. No,
I'm
I
making
can't.
artistic decisions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If I was on deadline, I wouldn't be able to spend this much time trying to figure out which dot pattern I want to use.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that would be, puzzling.
He sold the majority of Coppola vineyards, but the part of his state in some vineyards fields were originally they are still his. Yes, Coppola isn't gonna die a broken man because he created Megalopolis, starving in an alleyway, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That would be a pretty cool way for him to die, but he'll be fine. Also, this is just like standard Coppola lore. Like he's gone like semi-bankrupt or caused the studios he worked for to go bankrupt like 5 times. So wasn't he like I think he like Apocalypse Now was what, like 500% over budget. It was asking George Lucas for money when George Lucas was making the Star Wars money because he was trying to make some failed project. I don't know. This is just something this guy does frequently. Coppola may not have 100% of his vineyards, but he'll always get to think of the Roman Empire. This is true. Were you around for the internet meme of men thinking about the Roman Empire?
I was.
Yes.
Not in as deep as you, but.
Well, I wasn't
it
thinking about the
touched me,
Roman
yes.
Empire.
I think I've always thought about the Roman Empire.
You think about the Roman Empire more than me. That's for sure.
It's true. It's true. And it comes up in analogies.
Yes,
to
but
things going on.
when Megalopolis came out, one of the top reviews of it, the headline was, "Well, we know who has been thinking about the Roman Empire the most," was one of the reviewers, and I'm like, damn, that's a good headline as a movie reviewer, because damn, you're right about that one. He is definitely thinking about the Roman Empire. There doesn't exist a single good piece of Star Wars media. I don't know. When I was growing up, Star Wars media was like the only thing that had like an expansive universe when you were like 14 in 1990 or whatever.
Well, how do people feel about Andor?
I think Andor is well reviewed, but I don't know about the people in my chat.
That's what I'm curious about.
I wonder if LeBron made it past page 2 of The Godfather. The Godfather is one of the few ones of those like large hard book, like airplane novels I've actually read, and it's definitely not a hard read by any stretch of the imagination. So if there's one of the books, like I'm sure if there was one of the books in which LeBron was able to make it to like page 25, it probably would have been Godfather, but I doubt that's he was able to. Definitely more than like the biography of Malcolm X or something, that's for sure. People don't remember the shit level of other media when Star Wars hit. Yeah, that's the thing. When I was growing up, there just wasn't a lot of like these large expansive IPs if you wanted to get lost in that stuff that was being taken seriously. It was like Star Wars and then some of the comic books as a boy.
There wasn't even a real science fiction space opera movie, period. There was nothing to look back to where you could compare Star Wars to it.
If you think capitalism is efficient, all you need to know is that Hollywood took 40 years to figure out that producing stuff for male fanboy nerds was profitable.
Yeah, or,
and they're gonna
30 million people read the kind of literature that goes into the pot that Star Wars comes out of.
Exactly. And it took them like 25 years, 40 years to figure out that this was a cash cow.
And they didn't figure it out. It was a guess. It was actually a pretty low budget movie.
Well, yeah, for Star Wars, but I'm talking about in the period between Star Wars and like in the period when we have the MCU, where the only thing Hollywood wants to do is just produce endless comic book movies for the 18 to 34 to 45-year-old man-child demographic. Eventually, they'll probably figure out that women also spend money as well. But American
That'll take a while.
Yeah,
and they do have less. So
it's like sometimes at some point they'll figure out that because Barbie gave them like $1 billion or whatever, they should make more movies directed at women, but they apparently that's too complicated for them as well.
And again, there's like this huge, multiple literature genres that are read primarily by women and written by women, and that don't get filmed.
Although we did get our Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey movies, but yes. See, in contrast, Japanese capitalism actually works properly, and there's tons of shit directly marketed at women that gets made and is very successful. So that's another example of how Japanese society is more of a functional capitalist society than Western capitalist society. shout out a fantasy romance. There will be no such thing as shout outs to fantasy romance in this stream. Fantasy romance gets more than enough shout outs already. It doesn't need any extra help. I think consumerism does not equal capitalism. Capitalism is the reinvestment of capital. But in order to get the capital to reinvest, you need to get the consumerism to get the consumers to buy the product. So, I mean, I think they're sort of same difference.
Yeah, there has to be a market on the other end. And if you can't, if it isn't natural, then you try to arouse it through advertising.
Yes.
And if you can't do that, then you try to do it through government spending.
I'm just saying that there's all sorts of like female-based consumer products in Japan, like shonen manga that is supposed to be about young boys doing sports, but the only people who buy that manga are women who want to have their gay fan fiction about guys playing volleyball. So the Japanese market is just way more efficient than the American market, and people are constantly producing new products in Japan as well. As a socialist, I want to believe my plastic horde of anime cat girls would make Marx happy. What would make Marx happy? I feel like he'd just be unhappy.
He was not in the happy business.
I think he'd
any
be
more
unhappy
than you are.
all the time.
You and he would get along on that basis. It's like, be happy for what? Engels could be happy. Engels enjoyed life.
At least I have seized the means of production for at least my life. I'm not a cog in the industrial machine. I'm producing, as the worker, I am in connection with the product I'm producing, so at least...
Yeah, and you're in connection with the people on the other end.
Yes.
With the demand.
He would see that as distractions to the socialist cause, much like alcohol or fornication. Not fornication, fornication. Yeah, well, I don't know. It would be interesting to see how some of the socialist thinkers would think, if they would change their opinions if they were alive today after there have been so many failures in real life implementation of socialism. I don't think Marx would probably change his mind about anything, but he might. Who knows?
Well, he would say that what you're doing is artisanal labor.
Well, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about like after the failure of USSR and stuff. Because like all the socialists and Marx and himself could just be like, oh, they didn't implement it, you know? Like they can just be like, you know, it was co-opted by dictators and it wasn't true socialism, etc., etc. So.
Yeah. Well, the most intelligent guy I have found to read about that is a German named Sohnrettel, SOHN-RETHEL, wrote a book called Intellectual Labor and Manual Labor. And he argues that if you have a socialist state, but that state is not working out a way to reduce the gap between people who work physically and people who work intellectually, then you're not going to wind up in socialism. You'll wind up in some kind of managerial state capitalism, which I think is pretty convincing. And it's also something that you could imagine doing things about, even in the US context. For example, if someone was able to, like, becoming a master electrician, let's say you divide it into 3 stages. So there's an apprentice stage, and then people can go to college and do 2 years of a BA. And then they go back and they become a journeyman electrician, and then they go back to college and finish their BA, and then they go back the other way and become a master electrician. now they have two things that they know how to do, and they're much more interesting people, and that could be implemented. It wouldn't actually be that hard, but it's non-existent as an idea.
How about, before we think about socialism, other stuff like basic income, how about we try and raise the tax rate on the extremely giga wealthy by like 0.5 percentage point? Can we pass that in Congress?
No,
Maybe?
we cannot.
Okay, well maybe we should stop worrying about socialism then.
Well, you can take that approach, but then you wind up worrying about how to implement a wealth tax, even one that they wouldn't even feel. Just a starter, course on a wealth tax. But with this elite, which comes back to your point about the boomers, that is, some people are going to have to be removed or die off, which is why Kat Gazala is an interesting person, because she has helped create an atmosphere in which the 80-year-old incumbent in the district that she wants to run in decided, well, I guess I won't run again. And also the 80-year-old senator in Illinois, who's of the same generation, decided, well, I think I'm not going to run again. And a lot of that is, I think, because of her very effective propaganda of the deed in making those people feel uncomfortable.
I still don't know who this person is you're talking about.
I know.
How about we do the bare minimum LMAO? I'm not saying we should do the bare minimum. I'm saying that America can't even do the most basic bare minimum under any circumstance.
What is LMAO?
Laughing my ass off.
Oh, yes.
I mean, when's the last time America had a tax increase on anybody?
That's a really good question.
You know what? Grover Norquist, he won.
Yeah, he did. He did.
He truly won.
And that it's a good empirical question. And I don't have.
Although it's not that hard for him to win, because every politician, no politician wants to be like, hey guys, sorry, we have to increase your taxes. Also, please vote for me again. So it's always easier to be like, don't worry guys, you have to pay less taxes. Vote for me again. So
no, that's not intrinsically true, because you should be able to get the majority to agree to increase taxes on a minority, and it's happened before.
Well, does it happen in other countries?
Sure.
Yeah, well, Americans are stupid, and they, and I guess so. I guess the conclusion that Grover Norquist won was true.
Well, yeah, but in a way he was drifting with the tide, which was your other point. But nonetheless, he did win.
I'm glad we're living in that timeline. It makes me feel happy. At least somebody won.
In fact, only recently, Steve Bannon proposed a mostly symbolic, like cosmetic, increase on the taxes millionaires would pay. One that wouldn't really affect them, but would be a talking point, and it got shot down. Even though it wouldn't really hurt the people who are, the donor class at all. But the idea of being willing to pay a little upfront for them to have this propaganda point that they could run on forever, that was beyond them.
Well, if there was at any point where the Republican Party would dump the rich people, we want to support our modern aristocracy, it would be under the Trump regime. So the fact that they're not even doing that under the Trump regime, where they've really embraced the whole, low income. They're fucking embracing unions, at least during the campaign. So
yeah.
The fact that even under that situation, there isn't any talk of, increasing taxes, and they're cutting taxes even more. It really does show that Grover won. Bless his soul. I wonder if he's still alive. He seems like the type of person that would just fuck off and not say anything, I guess.
No, he did say something not long ago about this issue that I just mentioned.
Did he say...
He came out and said, no, don't do it, it's a bad idea. And he won again. So your point is, really valid.
Well, if I do Google him, there's a April 18th, 2025 Atlantic article about Grover Norquist can't believe what he's hearing, so...
That's the one.
Is the GOP about to raise taxes? Question mark. I know the answer to that, by the way. No, they are not.
That was April 18th. That's a long, long time ago.
I'll never forget the time that Grover Norquist said, segregation today, segregation forever.
He said that?
No, that's...
George Wallace, I think.
Yeah, I think that was George Wallace. Steve Bannon, the man who makes BaalBud look demure. Not fair to BaalBud. Steve Bannon looks extremely unhealthy, and at least if we're talking about some of the princes of hell, you'd think they'd either look like a giant fly or a dashing man or whatever. Yeah. That's the thing about the whole Antichrist thing, is that none of our current politicians look particularly attractive enough for us to be like, oh, we should unite the countries of the world underneath this person. So the closest we got was people claiming that Obama was the Antichrist, which says a lot about how popular he was. But he didn't really do much uniting all the countries under a single government, so I don't think he was the Antichrist, guys. Why is the Antichrist taking so long? I want my holy war now so I don't have to clean the dishes. You still have to clean the dishes. I don't think the apocalypse is going to stop you from doing your... If you don't have to clean the dishes during the apocalypse, then you don't have to clean the dishes now. So yeah. Deport Elmo Muskox back to Africa. I mean... The funny thing is, it probably won't happen, but there is literally a non-zero chance that Trump might try to do that, you know?
Yeah, if this goes on, if they get mad enough at each other, it's true.
If there's one person where you could get in enough of a personal argument that he would try and get you deported, it would be Trump and Elon. I don't think it will actually happen, but it would be hilarious now, wouldn't it?
It is really interesting because will Elon accept subordination?
I don't know. Antichrist is probably thinking humanity is doing a good enough job destroying ourselves. Well, the point of the Antichrist is to, like, show an alternative to the real Jesus Christ, in which people will be deceived and be like, oh, this is good, I can turn away from God and stuff like that, but... You know, that would be too nice. We're not even going to get that.
Yeah, it's true. And too subtle. I mean, it means someone can come and go.
Yeah.
Or people can go,
oh, this is really
Christianity
nice.
was wonderful, but this is great too.
Yeah, this is doing great. But unfortunately, that is far too optimistic a view of society. In fact, we will get no such thing. Things will not get better. That we will not get an Antichrist.
And we won't even get anything.
We won't get Jesus either. Jesus won't return and the Antichrist won't show up, so...
Either that or Jesus has returned and he's not making any headway.
I mean, if we want to be political, you can make the obvious joke that Jesus has returned and then Israel bombed that area and he was killed immediately, or he was one of the many Palestinian babies who died from malnutrition or something, but please don't ban me, Twitch.
Does Twitch ban anybody?
If they were going to ban people, it'd probably be more on the left side of the spectrum, but...
Uh-huh.
Was Biden the most boring president? No. There were more boring presidents than him, but...
How far back do you want to go?
We can't name them because they were so boring.
They were so boring. Yeah, but Chester A. Arthur is...
Who was the guy who died of pneumonia within like a week of becoming president?
Oh, well.
Was it Polk? I can't remember.
No, Polk ran the Mexican War.
Yeah, you're right.
He was macho. There's Zachary Taylor. He died really quick, like about a month.
If you can remember them, they probably weren't the most boring president.
Yeah, and then there's people who did a full 4-year term and were dull. Pierce and Buchanan, before the Civil War, they're really top stars in the boredom derby.
Let's ask Grok.
Yeah. Ask for the 3 top.
This is one of the most harder things for AI to figure out, because boring would mean there would be less information on the president, right? So they'd have to, it's like a negative search.
True. Still, this ought to be...
Name the 3 most boring American presidents. Least interesting. They're giving me Millard Fillmore, Chester A. Arthur, and William Henry Harrison.
Excellent.
William Henry Harrison was the president who died 31 days into office.
He's not the only one, though. Zachary Taylor died really quick, too.
Chester A. Arthur, the 21st president, took office after James Garfield's assassination. His administration was competent but unremarkable, focusing on civil service reform, the Pendleton Act. He avoided major scandals or bold moves, fading into historical obscurity. Wrong. I have a Chester A. Arthur memorial in my house. Fillmore, the 13th president, is frequently described as bland due to his short, uneventful term after succeeding Zachary Taylor. His main legacy, the Compromise of 1850, was a stopgap on slavery tensions, but he lacked charisma and left little lasting impression.
Yeah, I couldn't remember Fillmore, which maybe makes him number 1.
They all have a kind of energy like milk toast to their name, don't you think?
Yeah, sure. They came across like they didn't believe in anything, though that's not fair of Chester A. Arthur.
Yeah, but their name itself sounds like milk toast.
It does. Especially somebody's first name Millard, wow.
True.
Where did that come from?
Well-behaved presidents rarely make history. That's right. That's why you should perform unspeakable atrocities like Stalin. Again, I've said this before, we all want our leaders to be Stalin, but none of them actually have the guts to be that impressive. Not everybody can be Stalin, guys. The Trump-Elon feud is meant to distract us from the Hunter Biden laptop. Anybody who thinks that Trump and Elon are actually like pretending to have a feud is vastly overestimating the abilities of Trump and Elon.
Do you think it's like...
I've seen...
Worldwide Wrestling?
Yeah, I've seen, like, quote-unquote, supposedly smart people on the internet be like, don't be distracted, guys. This is all part of their plan. It's like, no, it's not part of the plan. These people are retards. Of course it's not part of their plan. People really want to think that Trump is playing 5-dimensional chess all the time, and he really isn't, and neither is Elon. None of them are. You're surrounded by idiots. Your leaders are idiots. They are not good human beings. They're not morally good or smart. Alright, I'm going to end the stream here because my dad seems to be suffering back pain from the shitty chair he's sitting in. Have a nice day, you guys. I will continue grinding the manga. I will try my best. Good night. How will this feud affect Jeb's legacy?
That's good.